Today I'm going to be removing the oil filler neck so that way I can replace the air oil separator seals. When they go bad, you end up with a lot of oil in this hose here getting into the intake and into the cylinders. You can see these carbon deposits on top caused by that. Now to remove this, you'll need a 13mm socket to remove the 3 bolts in it. One bolt is on the other side here. Another one is here, and finally the last one is down here at the bottom. Alright, we got our Pelican parts orders in. We have our oil cooler set here. We have our head gasket set here. This is our front end reseal kit. It even comes with a new triple square bolt. And these are rear balance shaft seals. Here's a few other tools that I picked up. Got another valve spring compressor. I got a pulley puller and the Ironworks flywheel lock. Alright, we got the flywheel lock on. I'm going to go ahead and break this front bolt free here. Alright, we just got the crank bolt out and these pulleys came right off, but we did have to use the gear puller here on the timing sprocket. He's removing the plastic cover now so that way we can access the front main seal and the water pump. Alright, we got the belt covers off and he's down there removing the power steering pump so that way we can replace the lower balance shaft seals. And while he's doing that, I'm going to come around back here and start working on the head. So alright, what I'm going to be doing here is removing each valve, making sure that they're straight, then cleaning them up and lapping them. Then we'll be changing the valve stem seals. So if you'd like to watch a video on this process, I'll put a link on the screen right now so you can go watch that video. So here's the valve spring compressor that I started off using in that video, and it didn't work, so what I did was I went and rented one from Advanced Auto that cost me 90 bucks. And it didn't work any better than this one here. So this is the one that I have this time. It is a Mac tool spring compressor and it works effortlessly. So if you're doing this job, get one of these. So just look at the size difference between these things. So alright, I have all the valves out now and I have them lined up with their corresponding springs and keepers. Now I'm going to get this head cleaned up and we'll start getting it back together. So alright, I got the head all cleaned up and I just finished checking the valve guides and they were all in excellent condition. Now I'm getting ready to lap the valves. Finished with my measurements. My valves are perfectly straight. The margins are perfect. And valve seats look good. So now I'm going to get this head cleaned up and we can put the valve stem seals on and put all the valves back in. Alright guys, this is just how simple it is with the correct tool. Grease on the keepers, hold them in place. And that's it. This head is ready to go back on the car. I have James removing the lower balance shaft cover. So alright, the easiest way to remove the Woodruff key from the crank is to move it to the 8 o'clock position, then get a screwdriver and just tap it with a hammer and it will come straight out of there. And as you can see, it's just that easy. So here's the first look at the front main seal. Now if you watched my other video, you would have noticed that the cam tower seal was not leaking. So all of this oil is coming from the front main here. And as you can see, it was a pretty big leak. So we're going to be replacing the front main seal and the oil pump sleeve as well. Alright, here's the front main seal that I removed, and as you can see it was leaking pretty badly. And here's the oil pump sleeve. Now what happens is over time the seal wears a groove in this and it causes it to leak. So I make a habit of replacing them every time. Here's the new one. However, in this case I may not replace this one because usually when I pull these out there's a pretty big groove in there, but I don't know if you can see that, but I can't even catch my fingernail on this, so I may just go ahead and reuse this. There's nothing wrong with it at all. We've got the balance shaft covers off and we're going to be replacing these seals here. And I'm going to start removing the water pump now. Now before you try and remove the water pump, what you want to do is spray some WD-40 or PB Blaster, especially here on these nuts, because it's very easy for these studs to break. So alright, once you have the water pump out of the way, you can remove the oil cooler housing. And it slides out just like that. So alright, we got our new O-rings put on the back here. And here's a look at it without the housing on. Try and slide this through into place. We have our Loctite on there as well. So everything is ready to go back together. So I used the front of engine seal kit, so replace this O-ring, replace the seal itself here, and even the collar. So now we're getting ready to put it back on. So right now we're getting ready to place the seals and the O-ring on the lower balance shaft housing. We've got the new collar and seal in, and the O-ring here on the back is on as well. I'm going to try and clean this up before putting it on. You can see here I've got the water pump off. Also got the oil cooler off, and we've got the lower balance shaft off because the rear seal was leaking pretty badly, so we're going to be replacing that. and put everything back together. It's already got the lower balance shaft put back in, but we got to put the power steering pump bracket on. So I've got it all cleaned up now, and that's what we're going to do next. So now I'm going to be resealing the oil cooler housing. I have my gasket set here, and here's the 5R housing that I pulled out of the car, and here's the 6R housing that I'm going to be putting in. So alright, I've got my new O-rings and plastic shim on, and I'm about to set it down in my 6R housing. So alright, we're getting ready to install the oil cooler, and again we're going to check the spacing here. And you can see I got both spacers on there, and you see how that rocks around like that. That means that 2 spacers is too many. I'll go down to 1, and you can see there it's perfect. Alright, we got the oil cooler in now, and you can see my alignment tool. You want to make sure that it goes all the way in, and when everything's lined up, you'll see that it's really loose and slides in and out. You especially want to use these tools when working with the early cars. So alright, we're slowly getting everything back together. We now have the oil cooler in, and next we're going to be doing the water pump. So alright, here is the new water pump, and before I put it in the car, I'm going to be installing a new thermostat and the belt guide. As you can see, the original water pump that was in the car did not have a belt guide. So alright, if you haven't watched my water pumps video, I'll put a link to it here on the screen. And I've already got the correct seal for this thermostat installed here. So alright, simple as that. I now have the thermostat installed. And again, I don't really recommend trying to install the thermostat with the water pump in the car. It is very difficult and time consuming. So when I made my water pumps video, I actually didn't have a water pump without a belt guide, since they're kind of hard to find these days. All of them should have been converted to the type with the belt guide by now, but every now and then you might find one. And now that I have one, I thought we would look at the differences between them and their idlers. So this large idler here is for the water pumps with the belt guide, and the smaller one here is for the ones without it. Now if I take the large one and put it on the water pump with the belt guide, you see there's about 15 millimeters of clearance between the impeller and the idler. And if I come over to the one without the belt guide and put the smaller one on, you can see there's about the same amount of clearance here. However, if I put this idler on this one, you can see that they just about touch. There's not very much room at all between them. And if I take this small idler and put it on here and line it up, you can see that there is a huge gap between it. So it appears that they compensated for the belt guide by moving the boss out a little bit further and using a larger pulley. So if you were ever wondering what the differences were and why they had 2 different size idler pulleys, there you go. Last night I got everything cleaned up and got the water pump installed. So alright, today we're going to be installing the head and the cam tower. There's a few parts that won't be until Monday, so we'll just try and do what we can today. And you may have noticed my cardboard here. This not only keeps dirt from getting down in the cylinders, but it also is folded up here to keep things from falling down in the headers. So with the cardboard removed, you can see some of this carbon buildup that's on top of the cylinders. I'm going to try and clean some of this up a little bit since it's flaking off. So alright, here's the pistons after wiping them off with a damp towel. Now you can see I've gotten most of the carbon buildup off. What remains is just a little discoloration, and I can't really catch it with my nail, so I'm not going to worry about it. So alright, what you don't want to do is try and clean the tops of these pistons with like an SOS pad or a Scotch-Brite pad, because not only will you remove some of this aluminum that can get down between the piston and the cylinder wall here, but they have the tendency to break into fine particles, which can also get trapped down in there. So once I've wiped the top of the pistons off, what I like to do is take a paper towel with some oil on it and just wipe the inside of the cylinder walls. This will put back any oil that you may have removed, and it'll also remove any additional debris that may be left behind after cleaning everything off. So alright, I'm getting ready to put the head back on now, and I'm just making sure that I've got all that old head gasket material off the block here, and to do so I'm using a new razor blade. You just want to work it back and forth gently and make sure that everything stays flat and smooth. You also want to make sure that your razor blade doesn't have any nicks in it, because it can scratch your block. You want to make sure that you don't leave any kind of nicks in there that you can feel with your fingernail. So always make sure you use a new blade. As you can see, I've gone around this entire block and there are no nicks and scratches in it anywhere. And it's done a great job of removing all that old head gasket material. Doesn't appear that there's much, if any, left. So I've also heard that people use Scotch-Brite to remove the material from the block, and you want to be careful with that because the razor blade's going to stay flat and just skim the material right off. And with the Scotch-Brite pad, you're going to actually be cutting into the metal a little bit, and that can create warping, and you also don't want to create any scuffs in this. You want this to be as smooth as possible and not have anything that you can catch with your nail. So alright, now that I have everything cleaned up and the surface is oil and dirt free, I'm going to be putting my head gasket on. Here is my new head gasket, and I'm going to be installing it dry. Alright, I'm ready to put the head on now. So alright, before I put the head back on, what I'm going to do is put a piece of foil tape across here so that way I don't lose anything or get any dirt down in these holes. Now that that's done, I'm ready to put the head on the car. Alright, before I torque my head down, I thought that I would go over some of the specs with you. As you can see here, I have two different head nuts. This one here is the 12mm head nut from the 85.5 and later cars. And this one here is the 10mm head nut from the early cars. You can see here that this one is right about 12mm. And this one here is right about 10. And if I put them side by side, you can see that there is a clear difference. So since these head nuts are different, there are two different torque specs for them. This early head nut goes 20 Newton meters, 50 Newton meters, and then 90 Newton meters, whereas the later 12mm head nut goes 20 Newton meters, 90 degrees, and then another 90 degrees. So alright, I'm going to start torquing the head. So it's been about 20 minutes since I did the first step in the torquing sequence. Now I'm going to move on to step 2, but since this is an early car with the 10mm nuts, I'm going to be torquing this down to 50 Newton meters or 37 foot-pounds. It's been about 20 minutes again, and now I'm going to do step 3 of the torquing sequence, which is 90 Newton meters or 66 foot-pounds. Alright, the head is now torqued on, and I'm going to work on bolting up the headers. Now that the head is on, I'm going to go ahead and slide on the exhaust gaskets, and you can see them here. And you want the labeling to face outwards towards you. When installing the early cast headers, you want to make sure that you get all the nuts on before pushing them all the way up to the head, because you may not be able to put the nuts on later on. So alright, the headers are now bolted down, and if you look right here, you can kind of see what I mean. Notice that there isn't a lot of room between the end of this stud and this header here. Next I'll be installing the cam tower, and as you can see here, I've went ahead and removed all the old gasket material. And next I pull all the lifters individually and push them in just to make sure that they're good. All of these were excellent. And before trying to put this in the car, I usually take some grease and put it along the outside here. Now I don't try and get it in the hole. Make sure you look where the hole is. You can see it there. And I'll put grease around the outside of it, everywhere but the hole. And this will help hold the lifters in as you try and place it on the car. Alright, what I like to do when I take the cam tower off is take all the bolts, fish them out with a flashlight and a magnet, make sure that I have them all, and then put them in a separate bag. So alright, I have the cam tower on now, but I don't actually have it torqued down or anything. You can see I just have it sitting there and a few bolts loosely in so it doesn't fall off. And I've had the cam out and I've had the lifters out, so I don't know what position it's going to be in, and some of the valves may open as I torque it down. So what I do in this situation is I take the spark plugs out of 1 and 2, and I want to have the pistons lined up about mid-stroke, so that way even if the valves open all the way completely, I'm not going to hit them. And I don't know which cylinder it's going to be on because I have no idea where the timing is on the cam. So I just take something and just sort of stick it down in the cylinder, and you can see number 2 is about right there, even with the head of this bit, and so is number 1. So that tells me that all the pistons are going to be about even in their strokes and going to be far enough down that no matter where the cam is, I can put this on and the valves can open as far as they'd like, and I'm not going to smack into it. Alright, I have the cam tower tightened down now, and what you don't want to do is just take one bolt and run it in and pull the cam tower down, because there is a lot of pressure on those springs, and just one bolt can just end up ripping the threads out of the head. So I like to work back and forth in a zigzag pattern out to the outside edge and make sure that each bolt as I go is carrying about the same pressure. So now that that's done, I'm going to go ahead and put my new crush rings in here, so that way I can seal these up and no dirt will get inside of them. Alright, now that the caps are on and everything's sealed up, I think that's a good place to stop for today, and that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.